dare I even adventure into beginning to read part 3 of chapter 5, Belonging to Life by Mary O'Malley. My name is Natalie. I'm the Good Shepherd here on our small hobby farm. These are long chapters, and I'm the Good Shepherd. I am like literally never sitting unless I'm doing something like this. And it's important to sit. These are the ways I create for myself in life to actually be still. Deep breath. Music's down. Flock is happy. Beautiful sunshiny day here in central North Carolina. Let's dive in. Part 3, Chapter 5. The healing of the heart. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Amen. Rumi. We have grounded ourselves, and we have opened. We have cultivated paying attention and awakened to the art of inclusion. We have explored the power of asking questions. All of these steps are moving us into the place of allowing these formerly feared and hated parts of ourselves back into our hearts. That is where our healing lies, because the heart can hold the opposite of the struggling mind. My journey into awakening has brought me into tenderness and mercy. At one of the 10-day retreats I went to every year, I made a list of all the parts of myself that I'd formerly hated and feared that were now woven back into my heart. I cried tears of gratitude and mercy, for I saw how deeply I'd been locked out of my own heart, and how this very prison of self-judgment had pushed and pulled me along the path of awakening. When we discover the power of allowing the disowned parts of ourselves back into our hearts, we may at first meet them in the hope that they will go away. They will become more manageable with every meeting, but they won't go away. The good news is that they will be transformed into our allies when they are finally embraced as welcomed guests. It is the most unwelcome parts of us that hold the power for awakening into the healed heart. I discovered this at a retreat titled African Drumming, Dancing, Ritual, and Art. Aha, said my mind. That sounds like a weekend of rhythm, music, opening, and fun. It was an unbelievably painful but ultimately freeing experience that finally allowed me to embrace a core part of me that I had always run from. On the first evening, I began to get an inkling of what I was in for. There was no schedule, no idea when meals would be. A transformer had blown just before we arrived, so there was no hot water, heat, or lights in the cabins, and very little warmth in the big, drafty hall. A number of people left during the retreat, and at times I wanted to, but I stayed, for I knew that discomfort always brings up the next layer of what is ready to be seen. So true. The second night, we began a ritual with very little preparation and with no guidance about how it was going to unfold or how long it would take. At 3 a.m, after having gone through many phases, some scary, some boring, and some enlightening, the leaders sat us in a circle of stones on the wooden floor with the admonishment that if anyone left, the ritual would be compromised for everyone. 2 people had tried to leave a few hours before, and we were sternly told they could have opened up the circle to dark forces. The leaders then left without any indication of when they would return. Up to this point, I had checked in with myself over and over again and had gotten the sense that it was important to stay with the retreat. But now, in the middle of the night, exhausted and cold, sitting on a hard, cold floor with no end in sight, I wanted to leave. Panic began to build in my body and mind as I was pushed to my limit, and my body felt like it was going to explode. My awareness was obscured by a mixture of terror, despair, and self-hatred. I can't handle this. When is it going to be over? I should have left. You are so inept. And besides, you're such a wimp. My old voices screamed at me. Then awareness kicked in. I asked, what is? And my attention came out of reaction and back into the living experience. I recognized that I was simply sitting on a cold, hard floor with 50 other people. This is like when I was Baker acted. You know, I took myself out of that moment. I didn't want to be there. I recognized, moving out of reaction, I remembered that my life is a journey of awakening, awakening where everything is grist for the mill of becoming conscious, I then asked, what is asking to be met? I began to see with deep curiosity and a heartfelt compassion the feelings that were ricocheting through my body. As I made contact with the feelings flowing through me, from the depths of my being came flooding memories of other times in my life, mainly in childhood, when I had the same experience of feeling caught in an overwhelming situation with no way out and no end in sight. But this time, for the first time in my life, someone was there meeting me in this indescribably painful place, and that someone was me. Whoa! I can't believe this. Yes, I was Baker acted several years ago by my family, and they thought I was going to harm myself. And when you live in Florida, all it takes is a phone call to the police, and you have no choice. I had no idea. That was, well, it remains the worst moment of my life, and yet it also remains the most divine moment of my life, because I was not alone there, and I needed to see how crazy was, to know that I'm not who people think I was. I began to talk to this core feeling of no way out. It was too enveloped in fear to respond to questions, but I could say this too. I include you as a part of this experience. As my heart opened, I could say to the terror, I see you. I want to get to know you. You were a core part of my childhood, and I'm not going to abandon you or get lost in you. I'm here for you. Rather than becoming caught in reaction, my heart cradled these feelings with a deep sense of tenderness and mercy. This softening and opening of inclusion warmed my body. When sensations of cold or panic began to seep back in, I found myself repeatedly returning to the warm glow of compassionate curiosity. As the room became colder and my heart warmer, what had been an indescribably painful situation was transformed into one of the major healing experiences of my life. I knew as I packed to leave later that morning that I had been deeply opened and now trusted myself to the core. I saw that even when I am pushed to the maximum, I was now capable of being there for myself when I most needed myself. My ability to be that present for myself on that cold floor in the wee hours of the morning came from the accumulation of many moments, both in meditation and in my daily life, where I met the core parts of my story rather than putting them out of my awareness and out of my heart. Because this was the first time I'd ever been present for the experience of no way out, I now needed to begin meeting this core feeling when it showed up in my everyday life. At first, I could only be present for a moment before I would flip out into reaction again. But having learned from many skillful teachers that going towards a state that controls you is the way of freedom, I returned again and again to what is and this too. Over time, I was able to sit with this fear both in my returning practice and during my daily life. I would watch what would bring it to the surface, what words it would use, and how it would manifest in my body. At the beginning, I would notice after the fact that fear had been present, but gradually I began to enter it, going through layer after layer so that when it was present, attention rather than fear would be triggered. In order to bring the amazing power of inclusion into your life, be willing to spend the next 24 hours working with this too. Whatever comes up, whether it is indigestion, a cranky child, a sleepy body, an agitated mind, be willing to recognize it and then say, this too. I can include this too as a part of my life. If there is something that the mind refuses to stop struggling with, a bad cold, a major meeting at work, a difficult relationship, ask it, can I let this be as it is for just this moment? Another helpful response is, it's okay. Hey guys, it's okay. As the mind begins to let go of trying to turn this into an emergency, you can go back to cultivating the inclusion of this too. As we begin to stabilize our minds by strengthening our ability to pay attention and opening into compassionate listening, we discover that whenever we really see with an inclusive heart, it is a profoundly healing moment. This is not the quick fix we've been taught to believe is healing. Just give me a pill, a positive thought, or a dose of denial, and everything will be okay. It takes time to learn to truly meet what has been formerly cut out of our hearts. But this is the pathway to freedom. Every time we go towards something rather than away, we have another opportunity to lessen our identification with these contracted states. freeing the energy that is locked in them so that we can be more available for the living adventure that is life. Is everybody okay? Joe, Cash! I hear him. He's getting into the feed bin. Cash! Creating a relationship with our disowned parts is an art. There are times when our attention is not yet as strong as the pattern that is asking to be met, and we find ourselves falling into the feeling, experience, or sensation rather than relating to it. Or we find ourselves running away to our distractions like busyness, compulsions, and even trying to understand. At such times when compassion and curiosity feel light years away, it is beneficial to have a first aid kit. This kit is filled with skills that allow us to bring a sense of spaciousness around these challenging places in order to gain perspective. Then, from a more spacious place, we can become curious again, and when we are ready, touch whatever we are experiencing with our heart. There are a number of things that can be done when the clouds of unconscious reaction have enveloped us and there doesn't seem to be any way to awaken in the midst of them. One of the most important first aid tools is to ask for help. Remember, there is a loving intelligence that permeates and penetrates absolutely everything. When we are caught in struggling, unable to see what is there, and unable to access any space outside of the struggling, asking for help from the intelligence that is always with us opens the door wide enough for it to get a word in edgewise. In fact, it could be said that all of the challenges of our lives are here specifically to bring us to this place where the only choice we have is to let go and ask for help. The contemplative priest and author Thomas Merton said that true prayer begins when prayer doesn't work. For a good portion of our journey, we have used prayer to stay in control, asking for what we want and trying to get rid of what we don't want. There is a point in the journey when we realize this only keeps us separate from the living presence, the sacred intelligence of life. When asking for help, we don't have to feel we are in contact with this intelligence. We don't have to see any great transformation after we ask, nor do we have to hear an answer. Just asking is enough. Help will come in its own time and in its own way. What works for me is to simply say, "Show me the way through this." It is also sometimes helpful to have a physical symbol that reminds us there is something bigger than ourselves that is in charge. I often light a candle and keep it burning all day long in my kitchen, a place where it is unusual to find a flame. Numerous times throughout the day when I come around the corner and see the burning candle, I remember that I'm not alone. Cash! I just feel havoc over there. I need to finish this up. When I'm away from home, I will carry special rocks in my pockets or wear sacred gifts around my neck. When we are visited by a heavy state and it feels unmeetable, the most basic thing we can do is shift our attention. If you've ever been a parent, you've probably relied upon this simple but powerful tool when your children are getting out of control. You place their attention elsewhere. It is wondrously amazing to watch a 2-year-old winding up to a full-blown temper tantrum, and when you invite them to watch a ladybug on the window, they immediately shift from anger to fascination. I find cleaning house can help take the focus off the struggle. A movie or a good book works too. Talking to a friend who will simply listen to us can also calm down the struggling self enough that we can then meet what is stirred up inside of us. Even if we stay distracted for a while, know that the deep inner work continues even though we are focused elsewhere. For when the struggling mind isn't busy trying to get a word in edgewise, integration can happen in a much more effortless way. It is good to remember not to take ourselves so seriously. The mind loves to turn the littlest thing into an emergency and the slightest mistake into a major screw-up. You grow up the day you have your first real laugh at yourself, said Ethel Barrymore. When a group of people over the age of 100 were interviewed, a common thread in each of their lives was an ability to laugh at and with the ups and downs of their lives. I love that moment in my consciousness when my mind is gearing up for a big trauma meltdown and awareness kicks in with, "Oh, the problem factory is at it again," and then laughs. I also ask, is this really going to matter tomorrow or next year? And usually the answer is no. Of course there are things in our lives we need to take seriously, but most of the emergencies we face are mind-created horror stories, and a little lightning goes a long way toward breaking this addiction to struggle. A friend of mine shared with me the phrase she uses, which combines the sense of how challenging life can be with the knowing that it is here for us, no matter what is happening. Loudly and with great vigor, she says to the process, "Fuck you very much." My heart immediately explodes in mirth and joy when I hear this. It includes both the resistance of the personality and the openness of the soul that knows it is all an adventure. So lighten up. Tell good jokes to yourself while you're in the car. Look for the humor. It is all a matter of perspective. There are many states that are asking to be met that won't let us shift our attention or lighten up. We can then use movement to cultivate the opposite of this particular state of mind. If I am caught in struggling, I love to move in a way that is the exact opposite of what I am feeling. If I'm lost in self-judgment, sometimes I'll cradle my heart. If I'm caught in a disempowered mode, I'll put my hands together in front of me and forcefully chop down to the ground as I yell, "Ha ha!" If I'm feeling foggy and unresponsive, I take a power walk with head held high, arms swinging in long, strong strides. Putting on music and allowing whatever is coming up to be expressed is also very freeing. Amen. It can also be helpful to go outside in order to get energy flowing again, to feel the sensation of rain on our face, the warmth of the sun, or the wind caressing our hair helps immensely. Nature can remind us that we are the earth awakening and are a part of a greater process. Also, beauty is literally food for the soul. Something happens to every cell of our being when we immerse ourselves in the beauty of nature. I also love going to a place where I can see for a distance. In a pinch, I'll even use my roof. It is very healing to the nervous system when our sight can extend beyond what is right before us. At times when a particular state of mind has been around for a while and I find myself unable to stay attentive, I will ask myself, what is the opposite of this mind-body state? I will then act as if I am experiencing it. Let's say fear is present. I will then cultivate strength and courage in my walk, words, and actions. This is not to rise above the feeling or to get rid of it, which result in staying caught in the pendulum of reaction. This is using the energy of the opposite of what is asking to be met in order to cultivate the stability and the clarity necessary to be present with it. Another way to work with the difficult states of mind is to enhance them. There is something magical in allowing an energy pattern to express itself to the fullest. And that very act of non-resistance and welcoming, it becomes much easier to weaken our identification with it and turn it into an opportunity for awakening. If I'm irritated, I'll feed the smoldering fire inside of me by allowing myself to get very angry. I'll stomp around and yell and sometimes even pound the bed. If I'm sad, I'll rent a sad movie or read sad poetry. Stephen Levine teaches a technique in which you press your fingers deeply into your breastbone between your nipples. This is the grief point. As you press, you begin to wail and moan. At first, it can feel artificial, but this technique has the ability to bring up the grief that is resting under our sadness. It can also be freeing to cultivate the recognition of impermanence. Nothing stays around for very long. Absolutely nothing. Not planets or people, countries or civilizations, joy or depression, pain or bliss, not even the difficult state of mind that is saying it will last forever. When heavy states move through our mind and body, they are usually accompanied by the belief that they are the totality of us and that they will be there forever. And yet, if you think about it, no state of mind has ever stayed forever, not even the pleasant ones. Just like the weather, they all arise and pass away. Through cultivating the truth of impermanence, it becomes easier to allow these states to flow through us rather than to identify with them and get lost in their content. One of the most powerful tools in the first aid kit is the ability to just say no. There are two levels of a skillful no. The first happens when we can't get any space around our story. During those moments when a heavy state feels like it is pressing in from all sides, we can say, "No, I'm not ready to deal with you." This is not denial. It is the ability to put the experience on hold, for sometimes we do not have the strength, the time, or the ability to deal with what is arising right then. It is important to watch the intention of our no. If it is done from an angry or fearful place, it can actually feed that state of mind or body. But if it is done with a caring firmness that realizes it is important to meet what is asking to be met, but that this is not the appropriate time, it will give us much needed space rather than throwing us deeper into contraction. The other level of no comes when we have seen enough of our story that when it captures our attention, we can firmly but with great heart say no. I don't need to identify with that. This is the place of empowerment in which we recognize that we fully have the choice about what we are paying attention to. I'm going to end there for now. 20 minutes in, this was another long, what did I say? This was part 3 of chapter 5. So we'll start with, tomorrow we'll go into part 4. There might be about 5 parts to chapter 5. The power of no. I began to learn that years ago, and everybody was like, "You're an asshole," and I was like, "Well, I don't want to go to your baby shower. I don't even know you. I'll send a gift, but I ain't taking no. I don't want to come visit you in another state right now. You know, things like that. No." And people go, "What? You're an asshole." No, I'm actually not, and you are an asshole. Have a good day, everyone.